Hey, John Spielkel here for GAI Insights, bringing you your top AI news, essential, important, or optional, putting thoughts in your head, time in your day. If you want to follow along, go to gaiinsights.com/articles. If you find this useful, please subscribe and like this, and also pass along to friends. Today, we have the ever famous Alden Del Rosario, the founder of CustomGPT.ai, Luda, Adam, Paul, and myself. Got some great articles today, everything from Anthropic's new economic index through some case studies out of AWS as usual. All right, let's go for the first article here. First article is the Anthropic economic index, and this is their ongoing activity to basically tell the world using the data, anonymized data out of their actual use statistics, what's going on in terms of countries, economic background, and so forth, in terms of what is happening with their model use. So, Adam, what'd you think here?
No, John, I saw in the pregame you were essential and I was optional, so I'm interested to hear your take. I'm sure we'll come across the spectrum here, but like it's a nice way of looking at things. I think particularly for their demographics, it's super insightful. I might make it important just to encourage people to at least be aware of it because there are some neat insights in there. But I just feel like, so let me explain a little more about what this is. They basically describe these 5 new primitives, which are the ways that they're now measuring economic impact of AI. And some could say like this could be incredible thought leadership and the new best framework that everyone's going to adopt to measure the economic impact in their enterprise, and maybe they will. And maybe this is the thing, especially given that Anthropic has shown a lot of thought leadership in the space generally. But so the 5 dimensions have to do with like the user and the AI skills, how complex the tasks are, how much autonomy Claude was given, how successful Claude was, and whether it was used for personal, educational, and work. And there's a lot of interesting stuff in here. I probably will say important, so everyone at least is aware that it's out there. But unfortunately, the subset, it's the vast majority of the tasks are specifically coding based, and it was also before Opus 4.5 came out, which is light years different in terms of the capabilities. So this is outdated, and it's also a very narrow subset of the larger Gen AI adoption. So it's interesting and useful, I'd say, important overall.
All right, Alden, what do you think?
Yeah, I would place it as important too. And if it is something, if you're in the coding space, then it might edge towards essential. As everybody knows, Anthropic is the king of like coding agents. Like Claude is just like spectacular. And Anthropic's own usage, like almost 90% of it is like coding related. So there's a little like bias in the data towards the coding task. But given the new tools that Anthropic is coming out, like Cowork that came out recently, so you can see that it's now starting to edge towards the non-coding tasks as well.
Yes, yeah, there's a lot of that here. If you look at this is their collaboration patterns, art and design, personal service, and so forth in terms of use. But yeah, what do you think here, Luna?
Yeah, I was important to essential. This is Anthropic not only, so they're looking at their user base. So yeah, it's coding related, it's correct. But they are also introducing the impact. So how much of the coding saved or predictability of the work to the impact, and they're tying the two together. And they also look at geographically how this is working with GDP of a particular locale. So this is very interesting. Yeah, granted, it's very specific to them, but I think it's a great indication for AI leaders of what's happening in their user base. So I think it's at least important, if not essential.
Yeah, Paul, what do you think?
I was on triple optional. I think so. Whereas Anthropic's doing well putting their models inside of other people's models, either stuff they built or Microsoft. That's fabulous. Anthropic's really good at having a code tool that's used by coders. Fabulous. as an AI leader at a 1,000-person company, for instance, here, I'm only looking at Copilot or ChatGPT for my secure employee chatbot, and I'm looking at a B2B applications. I don't care what the B2C usage is of this. And, ChatGPT is the 5th most used traffic website. This is 200th and something here. So I don't know what I would do. And if I took this to my CFO to get budget, if I were the CFO, I would say this doesn't help me justify what we were talking about here. Rolling Claude out to 1,000 or 100 employees? No. So optional.
Yeah, Paul, I just the Claude is so important to software development. You keep going back to the retail, use statistics. Yeah, that's a different market. This is the central. I would argue Claude is the place where most of the productivity is actually happening with AI.
Well, John, I 1,000% agree, but I just think, if Alden's running my tech team, he's already aware of this, and they've got their whole program over there, and he doesn't want to hear from.
I'd like to disagree completely, Paul.
Yeah.
Because for a 1,000 employee company, Claude is the app, because it's essentially took over the vibe coding space. So you can now really use Claude and it's a stack, right? It's a tech stack to production.
Right.
So you will be totally remiss as a leader of 1,000 employee company to not consider Claude.
So you want me to spend $500,000 to get Claude out to 1,000 people?
Yes.
No, Paul, let's jump into it. Come on. I mean, that's like, come on.
No,
That's not what we're talking about here. The way you're thinking about it from the consumer in is only half the story. The real story, I actually think it's less than half the story. It's what's happening. Software productivity is the thing. It's the central thing that AI is doing. Then it's also the first order impacts of software productivity. And now it's not just going to be software. It's going to be task productivity. It's the stuff you said before. We're going from search to answer to task. Okay, what's going to be fun? What's going to be driving that task thing? It's going to be Claude. And the fact it's 200th in retail, traffic is completely irrelevant. What's relevant is the key. It's the biggest commercial, flow of dough into the technology area. Just the way you're reasoning about it, I think, is completely wrong. Anyway,
Yes.
Right. So let's Alden talk, because I think you have.
So, Paul, if the 1,000-person company that you're mentioning is, say, a manufacturing company, then the CFO will be like, why do I care, right? But if the company has any form of software development, Claude is going to become as essential as, say, AWS, right? If you go to a software company with engineers and tell them, hey, we are taking your AWS away, there would be like a revolt, and they'll break down the door at the CFO's office. Right.
So, great. So you're arguing, want the AI leader to make sure to send this to their tech lead, their CIO, whoever's on the tech team.
Yeah.
I think we are missing the point. I think, guys, you're missing the point. We associate Claude with software, and it was the case. It is not anymore. It is a vibe coding platform that is the most powerful platform that, if even for the 1,000 employee manufacturing company, I would recommend now. I couldn't before the Ralph Simpson came out, but now I can. It stays on point. It does. So you talk to it in normal language. You can do sales. You can do manufacturing productivity. You could do apps that are helpful with Claude.
Just reflecting in the last 2 weeks, I have colleagues in security, sales, and marketing who have all written their own apps to help create instrumentation or dashboards or
in Claude.
Most of them in Claude, but regardless, the point is this is the direction it's going is out to beyond the developers. We'll see in the article shortly, if we ever move on to the rest of them, a little bit more about how important building will be in 2026 for everyone, I believe.
All right. Sorry. I'm using the power of the papal chair here. Ex cathedra, chair Peter. We're going essential. All right.
That's why we have the debate. That's why we got the show.
All right. So let's see. Next we have, what's next in our thing? Is the Auto Scout is next, correct?
No, translate gamma is next.
Oh, Translate Gamma. All right. Translate Gamma we have here. And this is a new suite of open translation models from our friends at Google. What did you think here, Luda?
Yeah, I rated this optional, but it's a very cool development from Google, essentially pushing translation across 55 languages and 500 other pairs in development and in testing. And they are open sourcing it together with the data and training data. I feel, and the models that they're introducing are 4 billion, 12 billion, and 27 billion. 4 runs on mobile, 12 can do laptop very easily, and 27 runs on one H chip. So it's smaller models and very, very capable. I tried to figure out how this compares with other models, and it seems like this is leading. So, but nonetheless, if translation is not like your key thing, it's an optional news. It's a development, maybe important from Google.
All right. Alden, what do you think?
Yeah, I would put it as optional, but I do want to give a shout out to Google for how they are pushing these SLMs basically, right? The small models, I spent like almost all of my December playing with them, and they are becoming super capable.
Yeah.
And when they reach a point where they can run on a phone, then a lot of use cases like this can emerge, and they are so easy to fine tune also. So you can change them to what you want to do and put it on your phone and all that. So that's going to unlock some good use cases.
All right, but optional in this particular article right now.
Yeah.
All right, Paul?
Optional.
Adam?
Yeah, optional. And I'll just say it's honestly a bit of a stretch still at this point, talking about 4 billion parameter models running on a phone. Yeah, there are some that can run it. When you say mobile, they might be talking about Snapdragon laptops, honestly, these days, which is where you're probably more likely to be running a 4 billion parameter model these days. And 12 billion is going to be a stretch on a laptop. So yeah, they're getting there in its achievement, but it's a step change. There's nothing earth-shattering to call out. So optional for me.
All right, there we have it. All right, we're going to give this one an optional, and let me go ahead and
now
head
Auto
to,
Scout.
what's that?
Now Auto Scout.
Yes, now Auto Scout. All right, yeah, this is this is a story of an AWS case study in terms of how they create a bot factory for scaling standardized AI agents inside this company, Auto Scout. So what do you think here, Alden?
Yeah, so this is another one of those Amazon recipes. I put it like optional. And if somebody is like completely married to AWS and has to live within it, then would make sense for them to read. At the end of the day, there was nothing spectacular about the recipe. It was literally like, call the LLM, let's do RAG, and call 3 tools. Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Yeah, we've got what do you think here, Paul?
I'm with Alden.
Adam?
This can't quite be considered a case study. I think a recipe is probably a better description. The closest they come to actually quantifying the outcome is that they said it actively reduces the manual support on the 30% of the time they spend on repetitive tasks. But what does that mean? Like they have no statistics in terms of how they actually quantified any sort of ROI from this or what the value was. So it's optional for me.
All right, Amazon getting a little lazy. What do you think, Luda? We're going for optional on this
Yeah,
one?
optional, and I loved the description Alden gave. Period.
All right, we're headed for files are all you need is our next article here. And in this, we're looking at, basically it's this thing's aimed at developers, and it's argues that files and indexing are central to effective LLM applications. So what did you think, Adam?
I don't know. Maybe it just felt like it was making far too an obvious a point for me to actually want to rate it anything other than optional. Like Yeah, you know, there are three things files are used for, right? They're how agents store information and search longer histories. They're the primary format for agents to retrieve massive amounts of context, so it can replace naive RAG patterns, it says, which I think might be a typo, so we know a human did this. It's a way to equip agents with skills, so you don't need MCP. And yep, those are great. They also, I think, I respectfully disagree when they say that things like video and audio are currently irrelevant for agents. Gemini 3 can absolutely work with file types like that. So this just seemed like some not even loose reporting, but sort of almost an opinionated look at a few things you might want to consider having to do with files and how important files are. But if you don't know files are important by now, I'm not sure what you're even doing here.
All right.
Maybe I missed the point.
All right. Adam's worried about stating the obvious poorly. Here we go. Alden.
Yeah, I would put it somewhere optional to important. The big point being made in this article is that not that files are all you need, but people like Manus proved that files really help, right? Previously, LLMs would just make these calls and probably do a tool use like, let's make a web search. And what Manus proved is that if you take enough of your files and context, put it in a folder, and then tell the LLM or the agent, like, okay, go unleash yourself on this,
Yes.
you can get really good results. And like, if you look at all my projects that I'm doing these days, the very first thing that I do is I create a data directory and I put like all the files required for that project in that directory, like a goals.md, a to-do.md, transcripts of my customer calls, right? And that is what I think they mean with this. It's files are now more important than before, but by no way are they replacing RAG, tool use, MCP connectors, all of the other things that are required.
And Alden, just for the audience then, so that files you put in there, they're not getting vectorized. You're just putting them in one storage area and now using that as where the robots are looking at.
Correct. Yeah, it just helps. Like, here's my
Saves
goal.
some context.
Here's my to-do. Here is my call with Paul and the transcript of it, right?
Yeah.
So the agent is able to like have much better context and flow as it's heading its way towards the goal.
Yeah, it's interesting, Alden. I know Alan Kay pretty well. He's the guy who invented object-oriented programming. And when he was the first employee at Xerox PARC, where they created the personal computer, right? And the way he described the research that they did, they looked at, and so did Doug Engelbart over at the Augmented Knowledge Workshop. They looked at complex interdependent work, and they had highly skilled people doing it. And what they found was that when you're doing complex interdependent work, you do exactly what you said. You bring up a context, so you have a set of artifacts, set of facts, kind of things you're working on, and you bring that into the workspace and usually share it together. And the original idea of objects wasn't opening windows. What it was is creating these artifacts. And then when you get done when you're moving from that task to another task, you can take a bunch of those objects. You can say which ones were active, keep updating, which ones were static. And then you shrink those down, and they sit in a semantic environment that gets updated by other objects, right? So this idea of windowing is just a trivial piece of what the concept of objects is. And so it's funny you say your description of work, because that's exactly what they designed it to be. And here we are, I guess 50 years later, implementing that with LLMs. That's kind of interesting. All right, Luda, what do you think?
I was important on this one. John, the reason being, it's about context. And as in the regular way of using LLM, like an augmenter, you don't hit the limit of the context window. In the coding spaces, you certainly do. When you put a lot of error correction in the same chat, you run out of space. And so it is the next wave of figuring out how do you keep the context here, can refer to it all the time, but and it's like John, you were saying, semantic network. So all of that will come to play to get us ready for the next step. So I feel it's an important message, even though it sounds like it's obvious, but it is not, I think. So it's a step in the right direction, and it can replace MCPs. It can replace RAG in a way, right? If you are working in a particular specific application. So I was important on that one.
All right, Paul.
Important.
Important. Okay, important it is. Democracy wins. Okay. We're now going to go to
John, may I? There are two people, Vivek and Ankaj. He's not here, but Ankaj on the prior discussion of Claude. So it's not just a coding tool, it's an agent building tool with a vibe coding piece. And then Ashish is saying Claude is the most powerful employee productivity tool, period. So it's interesting, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. All righty. So we're going to head to Zenken, which is boosting, team productivity, sales team productivity at using ChatGPT Enterprise. So let's see. What did you think here, Luda?
Yeah, I was optional on this one. This is a very promotional case from OpenAI with a company in Japan that adopted ChatGPT Enterprise across the organization and saw some improvements in Japan. It's really not surprising because they're lacking people. So the usage is very high, and they're working on knowledge-based tasks, and so it's a good promotional case, but I think optional for AI leaders.
All right, Adam, where are you?
Yeah, I was optional as well. It was all some fairly straightforward use cases in terms of using ChatGPT for helping with answering questions and creating custom GPTs and personalizing things a little bit based on some information they share with it. So a little underwhelmed and optional as well.
Paul?
I went in as essential and drifted important here. I mean, I think this is something on forwardability. I mean, I'm really bullish on how B2B sales can be improved with these tools. So I want AI leaders forwarding this to their sales leadership. It does have some stats on improvement. It is enterprise version, so people aren't using data to train. And it's a real case study. It's not nearly as in depth as AWS. So I ended up centering on important.
Paul, I think it is a little disingenuous though, because they say, it's secure to use because they don't train on our data, but we've already seen that the U.S. government can ask them for that information. So your data is not secure if you're giving it to OpenAI. But they frame it here like, because they don't train on us, we're good to go. Like, doesn't quite work that simply.
Well, hang on, but does that mean it's more secure in Google Workspace or hosted Microsoft?
If you have your business with any of the three major cloud providers and you already have your security posture in that cloud, then you're staying within your own cloud security posture. That's the point. But if you're committed to a cloud, you want to stay in that cloud. You don't want to be talking to OpenAI.
But if I'm using Salesforce and it's in Salesforce Cloud, then that's just as much risk as OpenAI Enterprise.
Yeah, I mean, the government shows up with a subpoena. All this stuff's discoverable, right?
Yeah.
But my point, but Adam, I think my point is any hosted enterprise app, Salesforce, you're making the point, OpenAI, HubSpot has that risk you're talking about.
I'm saying any third party that you agree to share your data with, you have to assume the risks that come with that. And you can't say because they're not training on our data, it's secure to use. It's not that straightforward. That's all I'm saying. And they wrote it that way in the article, which is a bit misleading.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I mean, the notion of, but the thing is about the government coming and doing it, we're articulating all kinds of stuff that is all discoverable, and so I think that, I mean, that's a real issue. I mean, and then the question of, where do you, do you want to be behind the do you want to own your own intelligence and have it geographically in such a way that makes it difficult for certain governments to get access to it? I mean, that's going to be a really interesting set of issues because, we're articulating the context of so many decisions here. I mean, this is going to be a field day for lawyers. Oh, Paul, you were having this conversation with ChatGPT about this very topic, and you can't say that you weren't concerned about it.
Well, but that's a bigger topic. But we're also saying that, if I use Claude Code for my proprietary data, I also have a security risk there because the government can come in and break in that because that's not in a on-prem secure.
Oh yeah. No, I think as one wag said some time ago, if you look at Shoshana Zuboff's book on surveillance capitalism, I mean, the amount of articulation, how we've given up, any privacy very easily, and now it's just regular practice. Anyway, I'm going to give this one an important as a decent case study, and we will continue the conversation.
I do like they did walk through some specific rep use case. I did like that. I mean, they did kind of start detailing exactly how sales can use these tools.
And John, Brenda Kirk is commenting that she will forward this article to inspire leaders to look for these at various cases. So
very digestible. Very good. All right. We're going to give it important. All right. Last article coming up here is from our friends at A16Z, talking about the YouTube moment for software. Kind of an interesting analogy here that Anish talked about, I guess, almost a year ago, and now it's talking about again. And so what did you think here, Alden?
So this is an important article, and it's another one where you can sense what is happening, and they are just putting words to it, right? By now, everybody has figured out that, literally, everybody and their mother is creating their own software, right? And it's literally the democratization of software. Like, Disney is not the only one making movies. Now all of us make all sorts of videos on YouTube. And that's the big point they are making. And they gave some good examples. There was one from the Shopify guy, Toby, where he just built his own software to read his MRIs. And I ran into the same issue this week where I needed to transcribe the conversation between two Serbian guys, and Gemini did a bad job. So at first I was like, let me try some other softwares like Descript or somebody like that, and nobody worked. So what did I do? I just went to Claude and I said, hey, here are two Serbian guys talking. Can you please write some software and transcribe it for me? And I was like, sure. It's created their own software, used OpenAI, whispered, and next thing you know, I had the entire transcript and it was amazing, right? So this is an example where you don't have to sometimes rely on single purpose SaaS software to do a given task, right? You can just build a software on the fly. And that's the democratization part of it.
Yep.
All righty, Luda.
Yeah, I was important on this one. I think it's maybe stating the obvious, but it is moving. The whole field is moving so fast. It's very hard to really figure out where we are. And this states this is where we are. I also love the title of this newsletter. It's time to build. And I totally, completely agree for anybody, because anybody like Alden is discussing can actually build those apps with no technical knowledge, only just steering the bots in the right direction. It's incredible. So important.
All right, Alden.
Yeah.
All right, Adam.
Yeah, I 100% agree. I think that's really the message for 2026 to everyone, is that it is time to build, and everyone actually just needs to discover for themselves what's possible by getting on one of these tools and just programming in English or natural language, Serbian probably even these days, right, Alden? I do want to call out, though, it's funny because they lump Wabi in with Cursor, Codex, Claude Code, and Replit. And I was like, who's Wabi? Like, that has to be an A16Z company, just that they're hanging up there on the same line as all the others. And sure enough. But an important point. And I mean, the point is essential. This article is probably important.
Yeah.
All right, Paul.
Yeah, I'm definitely essential. I think one of the important things our role is to help AI leaders understand when there's a step function up going out there. So everyone knows it's increasing like that. The reasoning models were really important step up, and everyone didn't quite understand it when they first came out. This is the same thing going on right here. This kind of incredible asymptotic increase in coding and the citizen stuff here. So AI leaders need to understand this is a step up, and also understand we talk about shadow IT. Now we're talking about shadow coding. So that's got lots more implications on how we actually think about managing this in our company here. So definitely
shadow automation.
Yeah.
So there are comments, John, calling this age of imagination to software or software on demand. Those are cool names.
Yeah. No, I think software on demand, management software. Yeah, Paul, for all the reasons you said, I think it's essential. The one thing I would add is that the YouTube analogy, I think, makes it very approachable, and I think it's accurate, in terms of how to think about this. So I'm going to give this an essential. Okay. So announcements, Paul, you're headed to our friends in Switzerland.
Yeah, I'm headed to Davos next week, so super excited about that. It's the MIT Stanford AI Summit, so that's on Wednesday. And I went last year really skeptical in Davos and left very impressed. So John Warner's doing his magic there, and I'll plan to do a bunch of short videos so people can understand what we're learning and what the process is like and demystify it. And then second, January 26th, 2 Mondays from now, will be our 500th show. So appreciate all the hard work and learning we've done with that.
All right. Adam, Ludo, any announcements?
No, not on my side.
Alden, anything from Custom GPT?
Good stuff happening, agentic stuff. We released something called document analysts, so you can analyze your documents with RAG. So
wonderful. All right. So we have 2 essentials, 2 importance, and 2 optionals. Very balanced Friday. All right. Have a great AI weekend. Look forward to seeing y'all on Monday. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye now.